The night had just begun at the towering glass building where Daniel worked. Most of the employees had already left, their expensive suits and polished shoes echoing through the marble floors hours earlier. Now, only the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the soft squeak of a mop filled the silence. Daniel, a middle-aged single father, moved quietly from one end of the lobby to the other. To most people, he was invisible, just the janitor who kept things clean while the important people built their fortunes. But behind his tired eyes was a story nobody cared to know. At home, in their tiny apartment across town, waited Emily, his 8-year-old daughter. She was the light of his life, the reason he worked 2 jobs, the reason he endured aching knees and late-night shifts. Emily loved music more than anything. Sometimes, when Daniel came home, he'd find her humming tunes she'd made up herself, using an old plastic keyboard a neighbor had given her. Daniel would smile, hiding the ache in his heart, wishing he could afford real lessons, a real piano, something that matched her talent. To the world, Daniel was just a janitor, but in Emily's eyes, he was a hero. Every night when he tucked her in, she'd whisper, "Daddy, one day, I'll play in a big hall, and you'll be right there." He always nodded, though deep down he wondered how. So, with mop in hand and dreams buried under years of responsibility, Daniel carried on, quiet, unnoticed, and uncelebrated. Little did anyone know, within his rough hands and calloused fingers lived a secret, one that had been silent for years, waiting for the right moment to be heard. The company's annual gala filled the lobby with glittering gowns, sharp tuxedos, and the clinking of champagne glasses. A grand piano stood in the corner, gleaming beneath the chandeliers, though no one had touched it all evening. Laughter and chatter filled the room as executives mingled, their voices echoing against the marble walls Daniel had scrubbed just hours earlier. Daniel had been asked to stay late, making sure the floors stayed spotless and the trash bins didn't overflow during the celebration. He moved quietly, pushing his cart along the edge of the crowd, keeping his head down. To the guests, he was part of the furniture, useful, but unnoticed. Then, a group of younger employees spotted him. One of them, with a smirk on his face, whispered something to the others. They burst out laughing. "Hey, Daniel," the man called across the room, "why don't you play us something on that piano? I'm sure a janitor's got some hidden talents." The others chuckled, expecting a clumsy show. Daniel froze. His mop handle trembled slightly in his grip. He could feel dozens of eyes turning toward him, some amused, some curious, many just waiting for him to make a fool of himself. He thought of Emily. She always told him, "Daddy, you can do anything." For a moment, he considered laughing it off, retreating to the safety of his cart. But something inside stirred, a quiet defiance, a memory of the man he used to be before life had worn him down. Slowly, Daniel set aside his mop, walked toward the piano, and sat on the polished bench. The crowd leaned in, whispering, waiting for the spectacle. They thought it was a joke. But Daniel knew, deep down, that this moment was no joke at all. The chatter faded as Daniel placed his rough, calloused hands on the keys. For a breath, he sat still, almost afraid to press down. He hadn't touched a real piano in years, not since his younger days when music was his dream, before bills and responsibilities turned dreams into luxuries. Then, softly, he began to play. At first, it was just a few gentle notes, uncertain, like a whisper in a crowded room. But within seconds, the sound grew, filling the vast lobby with a melody that seemed to come from the very depths of his soul. Each chord carried weight, years of struggle, nights of exhaustion, and the quiet love of a father who gave everything for his daughter. The mocking smiles vanished. Conversations stopped. Glasses lowered. People turned, drawn in by the unexpected beauty of his music. His fingers, though worn from scrubbing floors and lifting heavy buckets, moved gracefully, effortlessly across the keys, as if they had never forgotten. The melody rose and fell like a heartbeat, sometimes powerful, sometimes tender. And though Daniel never looked up, his music spoke louder than words could. It told a story of sacrifice, of loss, and of an unbreakable hope. Some listeners felt tears prick their eyes without even knowing why. Others felt an ache in their chest, as if the song had reached into their own hidden sorrows. The grand piano, once just a decoration, now became a vessel of truth. In that moment, Daniel was no longer invisible. He wasn't a janitor, or a man struggling to get by. He was an artist, a father, a soul pouring itself out for the world to hear. And the room, once filled with laughter, was now filled with silence, heavy and reverent. At the edge of the crowd, the CEO stood motionless. Known for his sharp eyes and steel-like presence, he was a man who rarely showed emotion. Employees often whispered that he had no heart, that business was all he cared about. Yet now, as Daniel's melody swelled and echoed through the lobby, something inside him shifted. The note struck a place he had long buried. His throat tightened. In an instant, he was no longer standing in a lavish lobby surrounded by wealth and success. He was a boy again, small, fragile, sitting beside his mother as she played this very song on their old piano. Her hands had been delicate, her smile warm, and this melody was the lullaby of his childhood. She had passed when he was young, and with her went the light in his life. He had never heard the piece since. Until now. A tear slipped down his cheek before he even realized it. He quickly wiped it away, but more followed, breaking through the walls he had built over decades of ambition and power. Around him, others were openly crying too, though none dared speak. The music was too sacred to interrupt. Daniel played on, unaware that his song was pulling the most powerful man in the room back into the tender embrace of memory. For the first time in years, the CEO wasn't thinking about profits, deadlines, or competition. He was thinking about love, about loss, and about the beauty of something money could never buy. By the time the final note lingered in the air, the CEO's eyes glistened, his chest heavy with emotions he thought he'd forgotten. And in that silence, every person knew something extraordinary had just happened. The last note faded into the air, hanging like a prayer no one wanted to end. For a long moment, the lobby remained utterly silent. Then, a single clap broke the stillness, followed by another, then another, until the room erupted in thunderous applause. The sound wasn't mocking now, it was full of awe, respect, and something deeper. Daniel slowly lifted his hands from the keys. He looked down, almost shy, as though unsure whether to stand or stay seated. He hadn't played for himself, he had played for Emily, for the love that had carried him through every hardship. He never expected recognition. Through the crowd, the CEO stepped forward. The applause softened as people made way for him. He stopped in front of Daniel, his eyes still glistening, his voice unsteady. "That was extraordinary," he said, almost whispering. "You reminded me of something I thought I'd lost forever." Daniel, humble and overwhelmed, simply nodded. He didn't know what to say. Then the CEO turned to the crowd. "This man isn't just a janitor. He is proof that greatness can come from the most unexpected places." Turning back to Daniel, he added, "Your daughter, she loves music, doesn't she?" Daniel's heart skipped. "Yes, sir. More than anything." "Then let her never be without it," the CEO said firmly. "From this day, her lessons, her piano, everything she needs, will be provided. She deserves to grow, and you deserve to see it happen." Tears welled in Daniel's eyes as he whispered, "Thank you, thank you." That night, when Daniel tucked Emily into bed, he told her what had happened. Her eyes lit up, her smile brighter than ever. "See, Daddy," she whispered. "Dreams don't die. They just wait." And Daniel knew she was right.